The rain taps against the library windows like restless fingers, and Jim Harrison sits 3 rows behind in Martinez, watching droplets race down glass while pretending to study calculus. The Riverside High Library smells of old books and the faint vanilla of Anne's perfume scent that's haunted him since sophomore year, but feels different now, sharper, like everything else since his father lost his job 2 months ago. Anne's dark hair catches the gray afternoon light as she turns a page, and Jim's chest tightens with something between want and panic. She's leaving for Berkeley in 8 months. He might not even make it to community college at this rate. You're staring again. Her voice is soft, but carries across the empty space between them like a secret. She doesn't turn around, but he sees her shoulders shift, feels her awareness of him like heat radiating from a fire. Maybe I am. His voice comes out rougher than intended. This time she does turn, and the look she gives him, part challenge, part curiosity, completely devastating, nearly stops his heart. Why? The question hangs in the humid air. Outside, thunder rumbles, and the fluorescent lights flicker once, twice. In that strobing darkness, something shifts between them. Jim closes his textbook and moves forward, sliding into the chair across from her. Up close, he can see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she sets down her pen. Because, he says, leaning closer until he can smell rain in her hair, I've been trying to figure out what you're thinking every day for 3 years, and I'm tired of wondering. Anne's breath catches a small sound that does dangerous things to his control. And what do you think I'm thinking? That you're curious too. His fingers find the edge of her notebook, not quite touching her hand, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. That you've noticed me noticing you. Cocky. But she doesn't pull away. Honest. Lightning illuminates the library in stark white, and for a moment they're frozen in that flash to 17-year-olds, suspended between friendship and something infinitely more complicated. When darkness returns, Anne's hand shifts, her pinky finger brushing his electric. That's the only word for the sensation that shoots up his arm and straight to his chest. Jim. His name on her lips sounds different than when teachers call on him in class. Softer, more dangerous. What are we doing? I don't know. The admission should scare him, but with her this close, vulnerability feels like courage. Does it matter? She studies his face with an intensity that makes him want to confess everything. How his parents fight every night now, how college feels like a luxury he can't afford. How she's the only thing that makes sense in his world that's falling apart. My parents think I should focus on school, she whispers, and something in her tone tells him this isn't really about her parents at all. Mine think I should get a job at the factory. His thumb grazes her knuckle, and she shivers. But right now, I'm thinking about something else entirely. The rain intensifies, drumming against the windows with growing urgency, and glances toward the exit, then back to him. And he sees the moment she makes her decision. My car's in the parking lot, she says, gathering her books with hands that aren't quite steady. Want a ride? Such a simple question, such a loaded invitation. Jim stands, his chair scraping against linoleum. Yeah, he says, knowing that everything, absolutely everything, is about to change. I do. Anne's Honda Civic smells like cherry lip gloss and the leather jacket. She's draped over the back seat. The rain pounds against the roof as they sit in the empty parking lot, engine running, heat fogging the windows from the inside. The radio plays something low and soft, Adele, maybe, or Billie Holiday, but Jim can barely hear it over the sound of his own heartbeat. We should probably go, Anne says for the 3rd time in 10 minutes, but her hands remain on the steering wheel, and she makes no move to shift and to drive. Probably, Jim agrees, watching raindrops create patterns on the passenger window. But he doesn't want to go home to his parents' tense silences and unpaid bills scattered across the kitchen table. Here, in this small warm space with Anne, the world feels manageable again. She turns to face him, tucking one leg beneath her, and the movement brings her closer, close enough that he can see the tiny scar above her left eyebrow. The one she got falling off her bike in 3rd grade, a memory he'd forgotten he had. Until this moment. Tell me something true, she says suddenly. What? Tell me something you've never told anyone else. Her eyes are serious, searching. Something real. Jim runs a hand through his damp hair. Considering, the truth feels dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff. But something about the intimacy of the car, the storm raging outside their private bubble, makes him brave. Sometimes I wake up at night and listen to my parents fighting. He begins, his voice barely audible above the rain. They think I can't hear them, but the walls are thin. Dad keeps saying he's sorry, that he'll find another job, that everything will be okay. But Mom just cries. She cries like the world is ending, and I lie there wondering if it is. Anne's expression softens, and she reaches across the center console to touch his hand. Her fingers are cool and gentle. I'm scared I'm going to disappoint everyone, Jim continues, the words coming faster now. Scared I'm not smart enough for college, not strong enough to help my family. Scared that I'm going to get stuck here while you go off and become everything you're supposed to become. Jim, your turn, he says quickly, before his courage fails. Tell me something true, and is quiet for a long moment, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. When she speaks, her voice is barely a whisper. I'm scared of leaving. She looks up, meeting his eyes. Everyone expects me to be excited about Berkeley, about getting out of this town, but I'm terrified. What if I'm not ready? What if I don't belong there? What if what? What if I leave and lose the only thing that makes me feel like myself? The air between them shifts, charged with understanding. Jim turns his hand palm up, interlacing their fingers, and Anne's breath hitches. What makes you feel like yourself? He asks, though he thinks he knows the answer, hopes he does. Instead of responding, and leans closer. And suddenly they're breathing the same air. Her free hand comes up to rest against his chest, right over his heart, and he wonders if she can feel how hard it's beating. This, she whispers, this feeling, like I could tell you anything and you'd still be here. I will be. The promise falls from his lips without thought, but he means it with every fiber of his being. And a car horn blares from the parking lot entrance, and they spring apart like they've been burned. Through the fogged windows, Jim can make out the shape of a maintenance truck, its driver waiting for them to move so he can lock up the building. We should go, Anne says again, but now there's regret in her voice. Yeah. Jim reluctantly releases her hand, already missing the connection. But Anne, she looks at him expectantly, her cheeks flushed, lips slightly parted. This isn't over. It's not a question, it's a statement of intent. A line drawn in the sand between before and whatever comes next, and smiles the first real smile he's seen from her all day and shifts the car into drive. No, she says as they pull away from the school toward an uncertain future that suddenly feels full of possibility. It's not. 3 days later, Jim finds Anne on the bleachers after school. Geometry textbook abandoned beside her as she stares out at the empty football field. The afternoon sun catches the copper highlights in her dark hair, and she looks like something from a painting, beautiful and unreachable and entirely present all at once. Hiding, he asks, climbing up to sit beside her. Thinking, she doesn't look at him, but her shoulder brushes his as he settles next to her. My mom called the school today. Apparently, I missed the deadline for my Berkeley dorm application. Jim's stomach drops. What does that mean? It means I might be stuck in town longer than expected. There's something in her voice, not disappointment, exactly, but something more complex, relief. Maybe fear. It means my perfectly planned future just got turned upside down. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of cut grass and the distant promise of rain. Jim studies Anne's profile, the slight tension in her jaw, the way her fingers worry the edge of her textbook. Would that be so terrible? The question escapes before he can stop it, and turns to him then, eyes searching his face. What, staying? Being stuck here? Would it really be that bad? Jim, because I've been thinking. He shifts to face her fully, his knee bumping hers. About what you said in the car. About losing the thing that makes you feel like yourself. Her breath catches, and he can see the moment she remembers the rain, the confession, the way her hand felt in his. I keep thinking about Berkeley, Jim continues, his voice gaining strength. About you leaving, about all the things you'll do and see and become. And I'm happy for you, I am. But I'm also selfish enough to be glad you might stay. Why? The word is barely a whisper. Jim reaches up, his fingers grazing her cheek, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch is gentle, reverent, and closes her eyes like it's too much and not nearly enough. Because I'm falling for you, he says simply. Have been for longer than I want to admit. And I know that's selfish. I know you have dreams and plans and a whole life waiting for you. But Anne's eyes fly open, and before he can finish the sentence, she's kissing him. It's not like the movie's awkward at first, a collision of breath and want and 3 years of unspoken feelings. But then Anne's hands fist in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Jim's world narrows to the taste of her lip gloss. The soft sound she makes against his mouth, the way she trembles when his thumb traces her jawline when they break apart, both breathing hard, and rests her forehead against his. I'm falling too, she admits, her voice shaking. God, Jim, I've been falling for so long I forgot what steady ground felt like. Then why does this feel like flying? She laughs, and the sound is bright and breathless and perfect, because it is. Jim kisses her again, slower this time, savoring the way she melts into him, the way her fingers thread through his hair. The bleachers are cold and uncomfortable, and they're completely exposed to anyone who might walk by, but none of that matters. Nothing matters except Anne and the way she kisses him back, like she's been waiting her whole life for this moment. What happens now? Anne asks when they finally separate, her lips swollen and her eyes bright with possibility. Jim looks out at the empty field, then back at her beautiful, uncertain face. I don't know, he says honestly, but for the first time in months, I'm not scared of not knowing. A drop of rain hits his cheek, then another. Storm clouds are gathering on the horizon, dark and promising. We should go, Anne says, but she doesn't move. Neither does he. Instead, Jim cups her face in his hands and kisses her once more as the first real drops begin to fall. Because some moments are worth getting caught in the rain for. Some moments are worth everything. I love you, he whispers against her lips, the words escaping like a breath held too long. Anne's smile could power the entire town. I love you too. And as the storm breaks overhead, washing the world clean, Jim thinks maybe, just maybe, everything is going to be okay. The abandoned greenhouse behind the school becomes their sanctuary. Jim discovers it by accident the following week, searching for a quiet place to eat lunch away from the cafeteria's chaos and curious stares. The glass panels are cracked and clouded with age, morning glory vines threading through the broken roof. But inside it's private and warm, and there's Dot and sits on an overturned flower pot, Jim's jacket draped around her shoulders, watching him pace between rows of empty planting tables. They've been here for an hour, talking about everything and nothing. Her Berkeley acceptance letter that arrived yesterday, his father's job interview at the plant to town's over, the way their family's expectations feel like weights around their necks. You're making me dizzy, Anne says, but her voice is fond. Jim stops pacing and looks at her. Really looks. The late afternoon light filtering through dirty glass turns her skin golden, makes her hair glow like burnished copper. She's beautiful in a way that makes his chest ache. Beautiful and brilliant and destined for bigger things than this small town. Come here, she says softly, extending her hand. Jim approaches slowly, like she's a wild thing that might bolt if he moves too fast. When he takes her hand, she pulls him down to sit beside her on the concrete floor, their backs against the old potting bench. Tell me what you're thinking, Anne says, her thumb tracing patterns on his palm. Dangerous territory. Try me. Jim is quiet for a long moment, gathering courage. I'm thinking about time, he finally says. How we have so little of it left. How I want to memorize everything about you before I leave. It's not a question. Yeah. And shifts closer until she's practically in his lap, her hands framing his face. Then memorize this. She kisses him deeply, pouring all her feelings into the connection of their lips. Jim's arms come around her waist, pulling her fully against him, and the sensation of her body pressed to his sends heat racing through his veins. And he breathes against her mouth, her name a prayer and a plea. I know, she whispers, understanding everything he can't say. I know. Her fingers work at the buttons of his shirt, and Jim's hands shake as he helps her, desperate for the feeling of skin against skin. When his shirt falls away, and palms flatten against his chest, over his racing heart, "You're beautiful," she says, wonder in her voice. And Jim has to close his eyes against the intensity of being truly seen. "So are you?" His hands find the hem of her sweater, and she raises her arms, letting him pull it over her head. The sight of her trusting, vulnerable, perfect nearly undoes him. They explore each other with careful hands and whispered endearments, mapping the geography of want and love and desperate hope. Jim traces the curve of Anne's shoulder, the delicate line of her collarbone, the rapid flutter of her pulse at her throat. She gasps when he presses his lips there, her fingers threading through his hair. "I want to remember everything," Anne says, her voice thick with emotion. "The way you look at me, the way you touch me like I'm precious. You are precious." Jim's hands are reverent as they roam her skin, worshiping rather than claiming. "You're everything." Time blurs. Minutes pass like hours, hours like heartbeats. They don't cross any lines they're not ready for, but they push boundaries, test limits, lose themselves in the exquisite agony of almost. When Anne straddles his lap, her forehead pressed to his, both of them breathing hard and trembling with want. Jim thinks he might die from the sweetness of it. "I love you," and whispers, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I love you so much it scares me." "Don't be scared." Jim's thumbs brush away her tears, his own eyes burning. "Whatever happens, whatever distance or time or life throws at us, this is real. What we have is real. Promise me," and says urgently, her hands gripping his shoulders. "Promise me you won't forget this, won't forget us." "Never," Jim vows, sealing the promise with a kiss that tastes like tears and forever. "I could never forget you." Outside, the sun sets in shades of gold and crimson, painting the greenhouse walls with fire, and inside their glass sanctuary, two hearts break open just enough to let love pour in. Bright and terrible and absolutely worth the risk. 6 months later, Jim sits in his dented pickup truck outside the Berkeley campus coffee shop where Anne works, part-time between classes. Through the large windows, he can see her behind the counter, hair pulled back in a messy bun, laughing at something a customer said. She looks different, older, more confident, like she's grown into herself in ways that make his heart both soar and ache. The drive from home took 8 hours, every mile a small act of faith. His parents don't know he's here. They think he's working his shift at the hardware store where he got hired after graduation. But some things are worth the risk of losing a day's pay. And sees him through the window and nearly drops the coffee cup she's cleaning. Her smile is brilliant, transformative. And suddenly Jim can breathe again properly for the first time in months. She meets him outside when her shift ends, launching herself into his arms like she's coming home. "You're here," she says against his neck, and he can feel her tears soaking through his shirt. "You're actually here. Told you I'd come." Jim holds her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo mixed with coffee and possibility. "Told you I'd wait." They drive to a park overlooking the bay, where the late afternoon sun turns the water into liquid gold, and fits perfectly under his arm as they sit on a bench, watching sailboats dot the horizon like prayers. "I got accepted to the community college back home," Jim says quietly. "Business program. I'll be able to transfer to a 4-year school eventually." And turns in his arms to look at him. "Jim, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Dad's working again. Different company, less money. But it's steady. Mom's started substitute teaching." He tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture automatic after months of dreaming about touching her again. "Things are getting better. And us?" Anne's voice is careful, hopeful. "What about us?" Jim cups her face in his hands, studying her beautiful, uncertain features. "That depends. On what?" "On whether you still love a small-town boy who's figuring out his life as he goes." Anne's laugh is bright and wild and perfect. "Are you kidding me, Jim Harrison? I have been in love with you since junior year chemistry when you helped me identify compounds and pretended not to notice I was staring at your hands the whole time. Your staring was pretty obvious. Shut up and kiss me." So he does. Jim kisses Anne like he's been starving for the taste of her, like she's oxygen and he's been holding his breath for months. She kisses him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body pressing against his with desperate relief. When they break apart, both breathing hard, and rests her forehead against his. "I have something to tell you," she says. Jim's stomach clenches. Good or bad? Good, I think. I hope. And takes a shaky breath. I applied to UC Davis for next year. It's closer to home. Close enough that we could see each other on weekends. Maybe more if you transferred there eventually. And Jim's voice is rough with emotion. You can't change your plans for me. I'm not changing them for you, she says firmly. I'm changing them for us. For the future I want instead of the one everyone else expects me to want. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. And smile is radiant, confident, absolutely certain. I want to build something with you, Jim. Something real and lasting and ours. Jim kisses her again, tasting forever on her lips. I want that too. As the sun sets over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky in shades of hope and promise, Jim holds the girl he loves and makes 1,000 silent promises. To work hard, to be worthy of her faith in them, to prove that love really can be enough to bridge any distance. What happens now? And asks, echoing the question she posed months ago on rain-soaked bleachers. Jim looks out at the water, then at her beautiful, expectant face. Now we write our own story, he says, together, and under a canopy of stars just beginning to appear. In the darkening sky, they do exactly that, choosing love over fear, together over apart, forever over right now. Because some stories are worth the wait. Some love is worth fighting for. And theirs is worth everything.